So we've got this idea of quality versus idea. What is it worth? Well, the NHS is prepared to spend about £20,000 per quality, between £20,000 and £30,000. This is what a drug needs to reach in order to be approved under the NHS. They do this because what they do is they look at their budget and then they try to work out if we funded drugs from the most effective to the least effective, where would be the cut-off line, and do they cross the cut-off line? That way they can maximise the amount of health benefit that the NHS can provide to the public, which I think is a pretty good idea. There are some slight exceptions to this. They use a band between 20 and 30,000 to take into account other features like equality, other aspects that might also be more relevant. But the main thing they use is this effectiveness idea. Now, there are a lot of hours in a year, and if you work out how much this is per hour, it's about £2.30, which I think is pretty good for an hour of healthy life. If there was someone down on the bond market who was selling hours of healthy life for £2.30, and I could trust this person, I would buy a lot of these hours. There's a lot of stuff that I spend my money on, and probably true with you as well. But if you compare it to going to the cinema or something for an hour, it seems like they're doing an entire hour of extra life, even for less. And so I think it makes much more sense to come here. You can question about how much you would spend. You might have £20,000 on hand. You can think about this hourly figure, or you can also think about a question about would you rather a salary of £20,000 or a salary of £30,000 to be blind. And if you consider things like this, and you look at how much people say blindness affects the quality of life and so on, then if you would prefer a salary of £20,000 in that case, then you're valuing a quality at least £20,000. You can think about considerations like this as to how much it's worth. Okay. Now, how much does it cost? So if something costs less than it's worth, it's a good buy. Yeah. So we think spending £20,000 on quality is a pretty good deal. I'll assume that you do. Can we get quality for less than this? So we can look at preventing or curing HIV/AIDS, which, as you know, is a major cause of death specifically in developing countries as well as in minor cause of developing countries. Now, this isn't just one grand issue. There are many different ways to deal with it. And it turns out to be a really important distinction, to take the approach by approach when you think about these things. So here are a couple of interventions that you can try. One is treating corrosive sarcoma by directly treating the lesions someone gets. This is an illness that people always get when they've got AIDS, because your immune system has to be really badly damaged. Or you can try using antiretroviral therapy to directly fight the HIV itself. So this is a measure of cost effectiveness, with longer bars being better. And here is the threshold of £20,000 per quality. And you can see that antiretroviral therapy is a really good buy here. Much better than treating corosive sarcoma, and much better than it needs to be funded in the UK. Much better than it needs to be a good deal. If you had HIV, you should definitely be prepared to spend your own money to do this, if it weren't for the fact that the NHS will cover you. But let's zoom out and look at some more things. Preventing transmission of AIDS during pregnancy, is even more cost effective. You can zoom out. Distribution of condoms is even more cost effective. You can only just see this £20,000 per quality barrier now. It is still there. We can zoom out more and look at education for high-risk groups, so sex workers in particular, to tell them about contraception and things, is even more effective again. And if we can ask whether there are things that are even more effective than this, and the answer is yes, there are, but not within the area of AIDS. So if we just want to say, what about all interventions, we can zoom out a lot more, and then we can look at treatment for parasitic infections, which I'll tell you about. So 33 million people have AIDS, HIV. 1.4 billion people have neglected tropical diseases, which is a name for a class of diseases which are mostly caused by parasitic worms inside the body. Very disgusting. The worms can be microscopic or quite large, intestinal worms, things like this. And very disgusting. I don't have any pictures for you. I should be happy about it. But I'll get on the facts. They can cause pain, blindness, and gross disfigurement. A disease called lymphatic filariasis, which is also known as elephantiasis, which is one of these diseases. It causes very gross disfigurement, which can then lead to people being ostracized by their societies. Also damage to various organs. They're pretty bad things. They're not as bad as dying, but they're pretty bad. Your quality of life goes down quite a lot. And interestingly, they're very cheap to treat. That's how they're so cost effective. Is that they're just so cheap to treat that for a given donation, you can treat thousands of people for these illnesses, which is really quite amazing. So in particular, if you think about this, you say, what level of cost effectiveness was this? Well, it was £2.14 per copy in this case. And if you recall, this is less than what we pay for an hour of life, but you get a whole year of quality adjusted life. Okay? So that's an indication of how much it costs compared to how much it's worth. It has the cost of an hour, but you get a year worth of value. And to just put this into some perspective, a diagram there. So, what can we learn from this? Well, health programs which are obviously amazingly cost effective, about 10,000 times more cost effective than here in the UK, about 10,000 times more effective than it's needed to be a good deal, and that our money that we have is much more valuable than we might have thought. I think that's an important thing to think. It's quite empowering, right, to think that your money is so valuable, but also a little bit scary. Each £2.14 you might have in the wallet at the moment is a year of life at full time for someone else. And only if used on the best programs. Right? I gave a whole group of them, and this year result is only the most effective program. So these differences for effectiveness have mainly been presented. This research that was done has been mainly aimed at policymakers and ministers for health and education. It's also of interest to all of us, though, when it comes to charity. So when we donate money to charity, we're trying to help people. I think in a lot of cases we're trying to help people as much as we can. At least that is to say that if you had two options, say the charity said, yeah, we've got two programs. One of them helps 10 times as much as the other. Which one do you want to give to? Give to one helps a tenth as many people. It's a bit odd. I think we think there's something going quite wrong there. In general, we want to help more. So suppose we donate money to help fight AIDS. Well, it really matters whether the program that we're talking about is one that fights sarcoma or that does education for high-risk groups. These things really matter if you want to help more people, if you really care about the recipients. It's not just about getting the money out of your pocket to make yourself feel better, but also really helping people. And if we really want to help people, maybe we should say, well, hang on, why was I interested in AIDS? Just because I thought there was a way to help people. If there are ways to help people more, like treating these neglected tropical diseases, maybe I'm interested in that now. Now, you can think about this as these different areas, as these different buckets that you could put a coin into. So imagine giving pounds into different charity buckets. You could produce different amounts of value, and you can imagine 5 of these buckets with an ascending amount of value in each one. And this is the kind of situation that we're in, where some of these charities can produce much more value than others, depending on what programs they're implementing. A lot of them do a mix of programs, they get something of an average. But really, you do get a scale like this, and this is the fifth one, to give you an idea of this, the scales at stake here. So from this, we can also learn that where to give can be even more important than if you give. Because the really big difference there is that you get your money into that fifth bucket, right? And if you move from, say, the third bucket, the middle one, to the fifth one, that's more important than the difference between putting your money in the third bucket and not giving it at all. Because the difference in scale there is much bigger. We don't put it all in the fifth bucket, though. We distribute it something like this, more of a normal distribution over this logarithmic scale. There's some good data on that. So what does all this mean? Let's get to some conclusions. Money is worth an incredible amount, but only if not used on ourselves and spent very wisely. So we really have to care where you give it. You can get something like 10,000 times the benefit for others as for ourselves, which in percentage terms is a 1,000,000% improvement, which is a number you don't see every day. And if I told you that, I could get you a 1,000,000% improvement on the value you get from your dollars. You just wouldn't have believed me, but now you guys know, okay, I believe you, there's a catch, right? Which is that you don't get to appreciate the benefit of that. Someone else does. But even with that catch, I think it's a pretty good thing to learn. It's also like a 99.99%. And you can turn our hours into other people's years. Also, we can do really amazing things. While living in the UK, doing whatever you want to do, and living an affluent lifestyle, you can do amazing things. So I'm not saying that one would have to go away and work in a poor country to achieve this, do a career you didn't want to do, not see your friends, live yourself in some degree of poverty. Even while living an affluent lifestyle in the UK, having a career of your choice, you can do a huge